It's Rakdos Cauldron against Is It Phoenix, and our players are about ready to begin. We'll give them, the green light. Oh, don't forget about Jingata.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Bonesaw's ready.
Oh, you put that under the cauldron. You make as much mana as you want.
Here's a Thoughtseize from Ashton via a Black Cleave Cliffs. The hand here for Ian is a Picklock Prankster, a Treasure Cruise, a Lightning Axe, a couple of lands, and it looks like the copy of Prof's Edric Memory. I'm going to get that right this weekend before it's over, I promise.
Eidetic?
Eidetic, Edric. I hate it.
I don't think there's an R.
Eidetic it is.
Well, there is in Profs and Memory, but I don't
appreciate
the
that.
second
Good
word.
Good save. Prof's Eidetic Memory. I'm going to get it right. Promise you that. Words are tough.
If that is actually a word in English, I am not familiar with it. Gonna have to look that up.
You're familiar with most words, too.
I don't know. There's a lot of them out there.
that is true. Does Tommy have a Cauldron, which is a key card in this matchup? It'll be a Blood Tithe Harvester instead here for Ashton. As we're going to head back Ian's way. Now, it is actually worth noting here because we got a little tweet. Little birdie sent us a word that Ian grinded into this yesterday.
Same with Tommy?
Yeah, so we have two players that it appears did some work in the LCQs yesterday to get here today, and both are off to a fantastic start, as Ian also has a really nice turn there in Ledger Shredder into Lightning Axe, discarding Arc-like Phoenix as part of the cost, trigger the Ledger Shredder with the Connive, discard an opt to that, and now the Ledger Shredder is a little larger in combination with that, and Prof's Eidetic Memory.
Were you around for me working with Tommy on his list yesterday after he grinded in?
Missed that.
Yeah, I told him to play another copy of Duress instead of some gobbledygook he had in his sideboard. Something way worse than Duress.
That's true. Duress an all-timer.
Bit of feedback that's undefeated. Someone tries to explain why they want some 3-mana card in their sideboard instead of Duress. Mm-hmm. And I go, come on, man. And then they put it in a Duress.
And that's all that needs to be said.
Yeah.
Here's a Fable the Mirror Breakers. We're going to head over to Ian now. Ian is not wasting any time on the delving for a Treasure Cruise. So 1, 2, and 3 cards headed his way. And now it'll be a beatdown here for, let's make it 6 all day. As Ashton's going to fall down to 10 from a very large Ledger Shredder.
Good news there for Ashton. No land, no follow-up there from Ian. If Tommy can find a Fatal Push or other piece of removal, probably can seize the tempo back here. But there's very little time to find it.
Ashton on Chapter 2 of Fable the Mirror Breaker going to discard a Swamp and an Agatha Soul Cauldron. Here comes the Goblin Shaman. That'll yield a treasure, and Ian's going to fall down to 16. See what the follow will be here, if any, for Tommy, who appears to be in a little bit of trouble. Now, you did mention the Fatal Push. There are 4 of those in his deck this weekend alongside a copy of Bitter Triumph, so there are answers to creatures for the Rakdos player. There's a Blackleaf Cliffs. This is another copy of Fable the Mirror Breaker, so another Goblin Shaman going to join the fray here in just a moment.
So remember that Tommy has the treasure token, so it's possible that he could be sandbagging Fatal Push, but remember with the deck list share between the players and with Ian playing 2 copies of main deck Spell Pierce, I think that would be unnecessarily risky. I don't think Ian's going to respect the possibility if he has an opportunity to just draw a bunch of cards and set up lethal this turn. I think he's going to do it even at the risk, theoretical risk at least, of Fatal Push.
Another Goblin token on the way. And that is in there for Ashton. It's a 1-1 of me. But technically right now I'm a 2-2. As here's an opt here from Ian. Top card's going to become the bottom card very quickly. There's the right Goblin Shaman. Let's see what's next here. It's going to be another copy of opt. So Ian very quickly keeps that card. And now here's a copy. Excuse me, that's a Connive first, pardon me. And now the opt is going to happen. Top card becomes the bottom one. Opt is done resolving. You see the counters there for Ian. Means this is going to be attack here for 6, 7, 8, 9. That's lethal if no push.
Like I said, I guess there's some chance that Tommy's trying to trap here, but it would be awfully risky.
Yep. And looks like no trap has been set. That's 6, 7, 8, 9, plus 1 is 10 all day, which is Tommy Ashton's life total. So Ian Robb is going to win game number 1 here over Tommy Ashton. Is it Phoenix? Very quickly up a game here over Rakdos Cauldron, as our player on the right who grinded in defeats our player on the left who grinded in. It's time to take a look at the sideboards here, everybody. And as we do, we'll start with Tommy Ashton, who will be on the play here this game. 3 Leyline of the Void, 2 Duress, 2 Hazoret the Fervent, 2 Obnixilis the Adversary, an Extinction Event, a Feed the Swarm, and a Red Cap Melee.
I know that Tommy is a huge fan of Hazoret against Is It Phoenix. Tommy said to me, and I quote, "They cannot beat it," which, you know, they do have Aether Gust, so I don't know if that's necessarily true, but in any event, very hard for them to remove, very hard for them to race. I believe that Tommy will want copies of Leyline of the Void in this matchup. It doesn't solve everything, but with Fatal Pushes to kind of control the Ledger Shredders in Ideal World, turn 0 Leyline cuts off Arclight Phoenix. It makes Treasure Cruise almost impossible to resolve, and I think Tommy's going to want his copies here as well.
Other side of things here for Ian, 2 Annul, 2 Ashiok Dreamrender, 2 Crackling Drake, 2 Mystical Dispute. A couple of cards non-listed here as well, so we'll be as complete as we can. It's an Abrade and Aether Gust, a Brazen Borrower, a Brotherhood's End, a Chandra's Defeat, a singleton copy of Fable the Mirror Breaker, and a Negate.
I like the Aether Gust in general, and especially if you know you're playing against Hazoret. I also would want Crackling Drakes in this matchup. Matchup's likely to go on for a long time, and in addition, it's something that operates even against Leyline of the Void. I also think this could be a nice matchup for a Null, as it tags Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Agatha's Soul Cauldron, 2 of the most important cards in Tommy's deck.
All right, everybody, we are going to very quickly talk about the Magic Spotlight Series that is taking place at SCG Con Atlanta at the beginning of next year. First weekend of the year, which is generally, you know, in our time doing this sort of thing, kind of a banger.
And not a bad time to get down to the south.
Oh,
It'll be
yeah.
nice and warm.
Oh, yeah.
If you live up in the Northeast or Midwest, like you and I do. The Spotlight Series is a new tournament coming to you from Wizards of the Coast. They will be all over the world through 2025. It's an open tournament. You just show up and play. $50,000, in the prize pool, along with Pro Tour invites. You can find more information over at starseedgames.com/SCGCon. And this is going to be an especially fun one to kick off the year because we're going to have the Foundations as the series spotlight here. The new set that will be legal and standard for 5 years. It'll be a standard tournament, so it'll be an opportunity to play with Foundations. And if you can't make it to the tournament, make sure to be checking out the coverage on a variety of streams, including on Twitch over at Star City Games.
Game number 2 coming up here between Tommy Ashton and Ian Robb. Again, Rakdos Cauldron. Is it Phoenix? Appreciate you joining us at home. It's Cedric Phillips and Patrick Sullivan here in the booth. We are, of course, joined by Ailey Loney, Corey Baumeister, and Nick Miller in the sideboard, and over 1,800 of our closest friends. Though I'm actually willing to say it's more than that because there's just 1,800 people playing in the main event. There's plenty of other things going on here this weekend.
It's a big show.
Yeah. I know people like to say on the old internet, the world is healing. Right now, this is the biggest tournament I've been to in some time, bud.
Yeah, I guess if your definition of the world healing is predicated around attendance of card game tournaments,
I don't know what someone would base it off of.
then yes. On other vectors, maybe not so much.
Well,
but if you're a card game enthusiast, hopefully you've been enjoying this weekend so far, whether you're here in person or watching at home.
See how this Rakdos Cauldron deck is able to shake out here in game number 2. Tommy does have some good sideboard options, but that first game, Ian didn't really do anything special. He was able to win the game pretty easily.
Tommy's deck, if you're trying to do all the Soul Cauldron and creatures that you want a Soul Cauldron and have enough stuff left over, that's a lot of space in your deck. It comes at the expense of some generic, straightforward cards. So game 1, he only has access to 4 copies of Fatal Push and 1 Bitter Triumph, and That's just not a ton.
Yeah, not much at all.
If he was able to find one that game, he was probably in very good shape, but didn't have much time to find it and wasn't able to.
If you were with us at the very beginning of the round, it is worth noting that our 4-0 players that we took a look at, our top 20, one of them was playing Demir Aggro, and Nick Miller, as he is one to do, so quick. Doesn't waste any time. It's ninjas.
Awesome.
With the new Kaito Planeswalker. And we're going to try to get that on camera ASAP, especially if it moves on to 5-0. I tell you what. Didn't even know ninjas was a thing one could do right now.
Mm-hmm. Neither did I.
I'm a pretty big fan of ninjas. I like it to be a deck.
Yeah.
I just like ninjutsu and ninjas in general. It's just a thing that people can do.
How many times do you think this person in this tournament has gotten someone with right before damage opponent tries to fatal push?
I am going to not have fun with your question.
Okay.
Here's why.
It's an open deck.
That's why.
Yeah.
I unfortunately the answer is probably 0, but if it's anything above 0, that makes it even better. Yeah. Gotcha. But now I just want to know what's in the Ninjas deck. Maybe a deck tech is on the horizon for us. We will see. Oh, this is look at that card right there. Old Den.
A Japanese Den of the Bugbear.
You ever activate that thing before?
Well, every once in a while,
Okay.
but only every once in a while.
Yeah. It is powerful. It is powerful. A Blood Tithe Harvester is going to yield Ashton a blood token, while we'll see a Consider here for Ian off of a Spire Bluff Canal. The follow-up is a Ledger Shredder, so both players do have some 2-drops, as Ashton's going to untap and draw for his 3rd turn of the game. That is a fatal push. Tommy didn't have one of those last game, but he has one of them this game, along with an attack with the Blood Tithe Harvester. Is there a follow-up? It's a Sulphurous Springs, your favorite. Going to deal 1, because it always does. And now it'll be another copy of Blood Tithe Harvester. So a couple of blood tokens, couple of 3/2 vampires on the battlefield.
I don't mind a Sulphurous Springs if you're playing a card as strong as Blood Tithe Harvester. Sulphurous Springs, Titan Strength. Not my language.
This will be a connive there on the Ledger Shredder. It's up to a 2/4 now as it helped. And is it Phoenix jump into the graveyard? Now Opt is done resolving. So we're going to head over Tommy's way.
It looks like Tommy has brought in at least one copy of Extinction Event. Only one in the sideboard, so that's the maximum.
Mm-hmm. How about another push?
Well, it's really nice here because the Extinction Event does not line up very well with Tommy's army of Blood Tithe Harvesters.
Yeah, not quite. Curious what Ashton may be thinking about now before going to combat. Is this maybe an Inti? Yeah, it is an Inti. Okay, so here come the attacks. And now Inti, well, that's a good card to put in the graveyard. Extinction Event's going to go there. Trigger there off of the Inti will be a mountain.
It's a nice hit here for Tommy.
That sure is. That's going to be an attack there for 7. So Ian's going to fall down to 10, play the land off the Inti, and keep it rocking and rolling. This will be a sleight of hand.
It's not like Tommy has a ton of hits there. It's basically just the lands. And hitting a land there, first of all, just make sure that you get a card. But second, it's getting Tommy closer and closer to being able to activate Den of the Bugbear.
Free the Fae. That's going to yield a couple of cards there for Ian. Bunch of cards in the graveyard right now. But Ian needs to actually stop what's on the battlefield.
And if this is a Treasure Cruise here, that is a land drop.
Well, that is a cruise.
And I think that with the blood tokens, I believe Tommy has lethal coming back pretty much no matter what.
Yeah, this should be pretty easy, right? Well, I guess a Phoenix is going to come back.
Okay. Blocking Phoenix is a tough way to do it.
Looks like perhaps a discrepancy on the way, so perhaps not. We'll see. Can't tell for sure if Tommy called a judge or not, but we're going to see Tommy doing a little bit of math here as now he's going to untap. So it looks like the game state is clear. And now Ashton will draw. Oh, it looks like something might die really fast. There's a go for the throat. Get that out of here. Here's an attack for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Trigger. Discard a spell. See you later. Tommy Ashton going to tie things up here against Ian Robb. Rakdos Cauldron. Is it Phoenix? Getting ready here for game number 3. Rakdos Cauldron, notably, hasn't done the Cauldron thing at all.
Well, my suspicion at this point is that Tommy has taken it out of the deck. Because we saw a variety of creatures, a variety of removal spells, including ones that are maybe a little suspect in the matchup. And at the end of the game there, Tommy discarded a Thoughtseize. So what is possibly left to make room for these cards? I'm assuming it is some combination of Agatha's Soul Cauldron, Tree of Perdition, maybe the Marvin Murderous Mimic. Just get away from some of the fidgety stuff and become more of a streamlined, classic Rakdos mid-range sort of build.
Do you think anything notable changes with Ashton on the draw and Ian on the play here?
I guess it would theoretically make a null a little bit less attractive. The mana efficient but very situational kind of card is usually more appealing going second. But, and especially if, given what you saw out of Tommy that game, there's a good chance that Soul Cauldron, or at least some of them, have been removed. At that point, I think, if a null was in as a no-brainer before, I think it becomes a lot more sketchy.
Well, game number 3 here between Ashton and Robb will be taking place in just a moment. But we just talked about, of course, the Spotlight series. That'll be Spotlighting Foundation. So we might as well talk about the next set that's headed our way. In Foundations, as Patrick did mention a little bit earlier, this set's going to be legal for 5 years, which is a really long time. But you can pre-order yours today at StarCityGames.com/MTG/Foundations. Product does release on November 15th as play boosters, collector boosters, bundles, jumpstart boosters, and a whole bunch more. I am genuinely looking forward to seeing not only what the entire set is, but how it's going to impact things moving forward.
I think it is a worthwhile experiment. Now, that is to not say no risk, because 5 years is a long time. Even if the designs are good, 5 years is a long time to play with stuff. Mm-hmm. But what I've seen, the most powerful cards, at least as far as the reprints go, I think they're reasonably good bets. Things that you can easily get away from, cards you can make things that are good against. If you printed something like, let's say, Mana Leak in this sort of product, I think that would be a huge mistake.
Sure.
Just 5 years of that card is a lot, and it's not an easy thing to design around. Land of War Hells, Pyroclasm, Day of Judgment, really strong cards, definitely impactful, cards that will have their day in the sunshine for sure, but also things that a talented design team can make stuff that is good against, or at least make incentives to play other cards instead of them.
Yeah. So these players are going to shuffle up here for game number 2. It looks like we'll at some point have a backup match to bring you to here as well. So looks like a lot of Magic in front of us here in round number 5. As we did mention at the top of the round, over 1,800 players in the main event. 1,818, I think, is our final number. But regardless, this is one of the biggest Magic tournaments that we've had this decade.
Yep.
Right? 2020 is what we're in.
Yep. Tommy sort of wildly gesticulating at the camera and or the judge and or the opponent. Not quite sure what's going on there.
All three.
But it looks like we're ready to go.
Now, I do want to point out one thing here very quickly, partner. Gigantha.
Yeah.
Gigantha. Elemental Elk. No card in your starting deck has more than one of the same mana symbol in its mana cost. Didn't present it, and that's why.
Well, the rules are tricky. You have to affirmatively declare that you no longer have it.
Yes. Yeah.
So we didn't hear that. But it's also not surprising to see Tommy here with Leyline of the Void.
There you go. So the Leyline is here to kick things off. Sleight of Hand is exiled along with just about everything else that Ian is going to play this game, presumably.
And what I really like about Leyline in this sort of deck with a lot of looting, you can get away from the second copy very easily.
Like that.
Yes, like that.
Just like that.
We saw a match earlier on in the tournament here that involved, double Leyline but no way to loot, and then just kind of died to stuff.
Well, in fear of missing out, discarded a second Leyline. The first one has been bounced via petty theft. Brazen Borrower is currently on an adventure. Might be joining the battlefield here in just a moment. But first, Ashton will attack here for 2.
But even that is the fail state for the ley line is still not that bad. You have an exiled sleight of hand. It forced a Brazen Borrower. It's still a threatening card potentially for Ashton to hard cast in 2 turns. So that was about the best case scenario for Ian in terms of interaction, and it was still not bad from Tommy's perspective.
Next up is a copy of Blood Tithe Harvester. That'll yield a blood token, and very quickly Ian is going to play Free the Faith. So, top 4 cards, a Pathway and a Steam Fence among them. Consider as a selection, sleight of hand, and those lands will go to the graveyard as we're going to head back Ian's way in just a moment. First, it is that Consider via Spire Bluff Canal. A Picklock Prankster will go to the graveyard, as will the Consider, and a new card coming from the Consider and now from the draw here from Rob.
Considering over a Prankster, that is a sign that Ian is under some degree of pressure. However you want to quantify that. You can't even make the argument that it's really about Treasure Cruise because it's also really good with Treasure Cruise.
It is indeed. Say its name and it will appear. Treasure Cruise is here, my friends. 3 cards coming here for Ian Robb. And there is a land for the turn. But no real interaction yet. Just a lot of card draw.
2 mana up with the ability to cast the Prankster that's on an adventure. Signifies some amount of interaction. Could be a desire to leave up something like Aether Gust. Maybe another copy of Brazen Borrower. But a 1/3 would be at least somewhat useful here against fear of missing out. So it suggests something real is in Ian's hand. You wouldn't do this just for the sake of bluffing.
It certainly suggests something. I agree with you there. So Ashton is going to attempt to attack here. And it looks like Robb may be prepared to take the damage.
Well,
maybe not.
This is risky business here for Ian because if you just played a removal spell, Tommy would have to think about Spell Pierce or Annul before redeploying the ley line. Now the coast is clear.
And the coast is clear, not just for the ley line, but for anything.
Yes. Now, Ian at least has gotten to resolve a Treasure Cruise. It's not the end of the world necessarily.
There's a copy of Ledger Shredder. The follow-up is a copy of Fable the Mirror Breaker. Trigger Connive here on the Ledger Shredder. Draw and discard. There goes an Arclight Phoenix. That'll be exiled. Turning Ledger Shredder into a 2/4. Goblin Shaman token from the Fable. That's a pretty good turn there for Ian Robb. We'll head back Ashton's way.
Mirror in the sideboard, also kind of a nice way to be able to get around ley line.
There's a push. That Shredder should be exiled, I believe. So we'll make sure that game state is correct, and that's been taken care of by a table spotter, so kudos to them. And now, the Blood Tithe Harvester is going to finish off the Goblin Shaman token with its activated ability. So Ashton keeping the battlefield clear, and now a Fable the Mirror Breaker of his own. So the very powerful Saga is controlled by both players, but Ian gets to Chapter 2 first. So that's why you'll see the die tick up to 2. Ian, of course, has the option to discard up to 2 cards. They'll be exiled if he elects to do so, and then draw that many. There goes a Phoenix and an Opt. 2 new cards coming. That'll be a Pathway. This will be a Picklock Prankster. And Ian will just pass the turn back.
A quick thumbs up from Tommy.
Ashton will also read Chapter 2 of the Saga. A 2-mana 1/3, not the scariest thing in the world. At least not yet. That can certainly change. Ashton's going to discard a copy of Hazoret. Doesn't seem like the best of cards right now.
Yeah, Tommy, not playing super efficiently in the moment here. Hand, I believe, about 4 cards in it. Not quite Hazoret time.
Let's see what this is. Okay, well, that kind of explains things a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's another copy of Hazoret here for Ashton. And simply going to pass the turn back.
Seeing the value of all this looting.
Mm-hmm.
Second ley line, no big deal. Second Hazoret, no big deal.
That opt should be exiled as well, so we'll see if we can get that corrected here in just a moment as the Brazen Borrower comes in on the end step. And now Reflections of Kiki Jiki is here. So a lot of cards exiled, just 3 cards in the graveyard. Leyline appearing to have an impact on this game. Not the fastest of clocks here from Ian with Brazen Borrower and Picklock Prankster.
But that can change very quickly if Reflection is not accounted for.
Yep. It'll be a Steam Fence that enters the battlefield untapped. And now a copy of Ledger Shredder. The follow-up is a copy of Crackling Drake, and that can certainly change some things. So, Spirebluff Canal is the discard. Shredder is not going to get any larger. With the draw from Crackling Drake on the stack, this will be a copy of Bitter Triumph that's going to get Spell Pierced.
Very nice turn there for Ian.
Yes, indeed. So, Pierce will get exiled. Crackling Drake draw a card. Here comes Brazen Borrower and Picklock Prankster for 4 in the air. And now Hazoret's got some real work to do to try to get through this nonsense. And Tommy wants to know exactly how large the Crackling Drake is, and I think the dice may aid us a little bit here in that.
So I'm curious if Tommy has this covered on the way back. Ian sent a very loud signal that Spell Pierce was in hand with starting things off with an untapped Steam Vents.
Sure.
With a ton of mana in play, which would have been pretty easy to work around now coming back to Tommy's turn.
Yeah,
you know,
continue.
If Tommy has something like Extinction Event or even another removal spell, that would make a lot of sense. But as it stands, without some sort of haymaker to punish Ian for it, it seems a little dubious to me to have allowed yourself to get Spell Pierce in that spot.
Well, let's see how Tommy wants to start his turn off. Going to start by discarding a Blood Crypt to a Blood Token to draw a new card. The follow-up here for Ashton, unclear at this stage. Looks like we got 2 mana. It's a fear of missing out, discarding a Blood Tithe Harvester. Another card coming. Looks like just 1 card left over, but it doesn't take much for Ian to cross the finish line next turn with Reflections alongside Crackling Drake.
So we got to check for Delirium here.
Yes, indeed. Here comes Hazoret and a Goblin Shaman. That'll yield a treasure. Looks like that's going to be a double block there with Picklock Prankster and Ledger Shredder. So 2 1/3s in front of a 2/2 means Ian's going to win that combat pretty easy. And that is going to do it. Ian Robb's going to win this match here over Tommy Ashton. 2-1. Is it Phoenix going to take care of Rakdos Cauldron? Both these players grinded in, but only one of them is 5-0. It's our player, Patrick, on the right.
Very nice win there for Ian. A very classic as if it is a game. Very efficient. Tapped out pretty much every turn. I was very impressed there in Game 3 with Ian's ability to kind of finagle around that Leyline of the Void. It was not like it did nothing that match. It certainly had an impact early on, required some resources to move around, but Ian was able to buy a little bit of time with Brazen Borrower, fire off 1 Treasure Cruise, and then work around it with cards that were not predicated on the graveyard once Tommy recast it.